for those with meaning in their roar. And thus the traveler would make its way to the Eliksni, but they would suffer much the same fate as the Harmony and the Ammonite and the Ecumene, and they would suffer at the hands of the Darkness and the Hive. Their entire system was destroyed in an event remembered only to the Eliksni as the Whirlwind, where they were left to make a great exodus and abandon their home, following whatever trace of the traveler they could. The Great Machine, as they would come to call it, would however find a new place to set its roots. As the Eliksni transformed their once noble society into a more barbaric and tribal one, the traveler had begun to take root above a system and a planet far, far away. The name of the planet was Mars, the name of the system was Sol, and the year in the human Gregorian calendar was that of 2014. And in this year, it found us. In that year of 2014, humanity witnessed an unknown artifact entering the orbit of the atmosphere of our closest neighboring planet of Mars. It was clear for all to see. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. This strange object was of immediate concern to the powers of Earth, and 15 months later, with cooperation, planning, and commitment, humanity sent its response. The combined powers of the People's Republic of China, Russian Federation, and United States of America led to the creation of the most famous space voyage known in human history, the voyage that would come to be known as Ares 1. And so it was that one taikonaut, one cosmonaut, and one astronaut, Chow, Mielova, and Hardy, all set out on a journey that would change history. Mars, of course, is a planet with little to no atmosphere, and yet, when the Ares 1 craft touched down, it did so in the middle of a storm, the breath of God as the wind buffeted them back and forth before landing. This was not some strange coincidence. This was the work of the artifact. And as they took their gear and trekked across the Martian surface, they could start to see the artifact come into view over the horizon. As they crested the ridge ahead of them, they saw it completely for the first time. It was at this moment that the first Martian rains began to pour, and the actions of the object were made clear. It was terraforming Mars. And something else became clear as well. This alien presence was not some conqueror or some terrible invader, but was instead benevolent. They called it the Traveler, and its arrival in Sol would change humanity forever. This would be known as the start of our Golden Age. The Traveler's divine presence would be a boon to our system, and under the radiance of its light, Sol, Earth, and humanity would blossom. The planets and moons of the system were terraformed, with worlds like Mars and Venus becoming habitable planets with diverse ecosystems of life and repositories of resources. The moon became the way station for all of the system, sending resources from Earth to far-off colonies on the methane oceans of Titan or the garden world of Mercury. But perhaps the most profound change of them all was the people of Earth themselves. Human lifespans tripled, and the fundamental ethos of our society changed and evolved. Not only were we more intelligent and longer lived as a species, but we also put that knowledge to use instead of squandering it. We cured a myriad of diseases that had haunted us, put study into any number of emerging scientific and philosophical fields, and we extinguished the old hatreds of mankind's past forever. Humanity created vast monuments throughout the solar system as the Traveler worked to seed it for us. From the great Martian city of Freehold to the new Pacifica arcology of Titan, from the solar research stations of Mercury to the Ishtar Academy on Venus. Humanity began to flourish in every place imaginable in the system. Beyond merely the places we laid claim to, there were the remarkable accomplishments we attained in this time, with the great minds of the Clovis Bray Corporation and others like them leading the way and bringing forth some of humanity's greatest inventions. The rise of one of these was most notorious and important of all, the War Mind, Rasputin, a supercomputer tasked with the mandate of defending humanity from extrasolar threats or sky shock alerts. Rasputin was an intelligence of such immense might that it was capable of predicting and calculating threats before having even encountered them, and of devising a solution to them so that they might never threaten humanity even if they did enter the system. Rasputin was armed with a vast defensive array of weapons and doomsday devices that could scorch black the skies of 1,000 worlds in the name of humanity's defense, should the need arise. But this wasn't the only great invention of Clovis Bray. They also created many incredible technologies, such as the intelligent nanotechnology known as SIVA, which could be commanded to construct anything imaginable. This made it a particularly valuable technology to those colonists who were heading outward to the stars, as it could be spontaneously used to create anything from a prefabricated shelter to an oxygen rebreather, if given the correct direction. Furthermore, when relic iron, a mysterious new material, was studied on Mars, the Clovis Bray Corporation discovered an entirely new state of matter, where data was completely free from the restraints of physical matter. This state was known as engram, and it allowed any idea imaginable to be stored. And of course, there were the Exos, a project of Clovis Bray that allowed humans to transplant their consciousness into a mechanical body and live on past the point of normal human life expectancies. However, there are hints in the programming and the past lives of Exos still alive today that give us an idea that they may have been more violent in nature. The Exos dream of a place where they were born, the Deep Stone Crypt, and whilst some of them go there and walk peacefully through a field of golden millet, most of them dream of almost endless battle to reach the tower where they were born. But this is not to say that Clovis Bray was not the only one researching remarkable technologies for humanity or making incredible discoveries throughout the system. The researchers of the Ishtar Academy on Venus at this time discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization on Venus that predated humanity by billions of years. These were the Vex, and the ruins they discovered were those of the Vault of Glass and the Infinite Steps. The Ishtar Academy and the Ishtar Collective would make it their responsibility to study the Vex and their constructs at any place possible. As our golden age magnified our glory, humanity's greatness shone like a beacon in the night, illuminating the very stars themselves, and convincing us that our destiny was not to remain on Earth like our ancestors, or to continue their petty wars, but instead was to reach forwards and upwards to the stars and to grasp the very majesty and grandeur of the universe itself. We flew out into those stars and spread our wings. Alas, that we let our hubris get the better of us. Not all were so ill-prepared or foolish, though. Whilst most sat in complacency beneath the glorious bounty of the traveller, some, such as the three families of the Black Armory, would begin crafting phase technology and weapons so that they might fight back or defend themselves. A noble effort, but tragically, it would not be even close to enough to stop what would come next. As the centuries of the Golden Age passed, the War Mind began to detect something far beyond the reaches of the system, something dark and terrible, something that spelled our doom. Rasputin's responsibility was to defend humanity, and to this end, the Exodus program was created, a colonization effort that involved thousands upon thousands of souls, all being loaded onto colony ships and sent outward to the stars. But in spite of this titanic effort by Rasputin and his subminds, such as Malahayati, In spite of the valiant efforts of General Chen Lanshu, in spite of everything that humanity would attempt to accomplish before the end, it would not be enough. As the vessels of the Exodus program began to reach further out towards the edges of the solar system, something terrible and dark swept them back in the other direction. The Warmind raised its mighty weapons that were strong enough to shatter the might of stars, and responded to this threat with the full fury of its arsenal. But alas, even this was not enough. The darkness had found our system, and in doing so, had found the Traveler. Doom was upon us. The Golden Age was ending. The collapse had begun. The dark tide that was upon our system brought with it a terrible doom that could not be defeated by the Warmind and its defenses. But the foe Rasputin faced was not by any measure one that could be considered normal. The darkness, much like the Traveler, defied simple causality and defied even the basic rules and logics of the universe. Physics, mathematics, they meant nothing before this entity. It could not be defeated with the weapons of the Warmind alone, and it was made clear from this moment that our annihilation was inevitable. The vessels further out in the bounds of our system were crushed by the darkness as they attempted to reach beyond the asteroid belt. These ships would eventually form a mass of broken debris within the belt itself, and this place, this terrifying graveyard of all that humanity had hoped to see, this would come to be known as the Reef. And this would be a fate much like many of those on Earth and its colonies would suffer. They would be crushed beneath the wheel of the shadow of darkness as it passed ever onwards through the howling void of the universe, killing indiscriminately in the name of its twisted logic that life should be able to fight and meet strength with strength. But the darkness's fury was not yet sated. The darkness had another target in mind. It was also here for the Traveler. The details and accounts from this time are limited and unclear, but there are several accounts worth referring to when speaking of the darkness during the collapse. The account from Cade Six's journals speak of a terrible miasma that spread across the many worlds of the system, holding every human it could find in its grasp and drowning them in a tide of doom and despair. Cade seemed to point towards the darkness having a malicious consciousness. As it was drowning its victims, the victims were allowed to be fully conscious. They were aware, they were lucid, and yet even as agony and pain washed over them, the darkness wished them to witness the destruction of their world. It wished them to know they had been beaten, outmatched, and utterly destroyed, that they were unworthy of existence, that they were prey, nothing more. The Black Armory Papers, a series of journal entries kept by the founder, Henrietta Meran, detailed another encounter with the darkness. Their group had been locked within one of the fortified facilities of the Black Armory, and had to hold back terrible, indescribable creatures that broke through their defenses. They smelled only like wet earth, and made sounds akin to the screeching of machinery. One thing that is made clear by every entry is that the foe that had taken Earth was a terrible one that would see us all destroyed if something was not done. At this time in the system, others were starting to stake their claims too. It was in these moments that another terrible pair of interlopers arrived. Nokris and Zol, the Will of Thousands, took it upon themselves to claim the planet of Mars and to rain down an assault on Hellas Basin, where Rasputin's main control center was kept. However, in a successful attempt to hold off the forces of the Hive Prince and the Worm God, Rasputin used its power to flash freeze the entire region, locking the Worm God, the Prince, and their hive servants away under a thick sheet of ice. In turn, Rasputin too would also experience a period of dormancy. We would hear nothing from Rasputin's true centralized network for centuries, as only fragments of him remained within the various Warmind bunkers that were still active across Earth and its many territories. What happened next is an event clouded in mystery and uncertainty. Some spread rumors that the Traveler was in the process of fleeing the system as it had done so many times before. Others spread rumors that Rasputin might have engaged the Traveler as it attempted to flee in order to prevent this outcome. And some merely believe that the Traveler was attempting to find the right spot to stand and fight against the menace that had embroiled itself throughout our system. Whatever the truth might be, the Traveler moved from its previous resting place on Io and found its way to Earth. Here it would make a titanic stand against its enemy, the Darkness. The battle was long and would shake the heavens and the earth, a battle of proportions that the universe perhaps had never seen before, of the titanic forces of the cosmos, of a yin and a yang, smashing against each other, breaking upon each other like waves on rock, with enough force to level a mountain and raise it again within the blink of an eye. The two fought. The two stood. The two tested themselves. And what's more, the Traveler won. It was crippled and broken, but it sacrificed itself to save us and to push back the darkness. But its sacrifice was not without some form of hope. With the Traveler's dying breath, it created the Ghosts. Small, autonomous drones filled with the power of its light. These ghosts would serve the forces of humanity and would seek out those amongst the worthy dead who might possibly provide hope to humanity and its defenders. These would be the few chosen champions that could wield the Traveler's light as a weapon. In the earliest days that followed the collapse, these beings were known as the Risen, and whilst they would come later to be known as Warlords or Iron Lords or simply Lightbearers, today they are known by a simpler name: the Guardians.